you would start seeing commercials on CNN.
Yes.
EPC 157 helps soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
Helps this, helps that. Then you'd show fit people at the beach jogging.
Yeah. There's the traditional system, the sick care system. That system is controlled by insurance, big pharmaceutical companies, and regulators. Whether intentional or unintentional, the system was cooked. It's been cooked and baked for a long time, and it is the system that it is. And we know where that system got us. That system got us to 1.7 to 1.9 million Americans dying every year of chronic disease, more than every world war we've ever fought. It's got us to be the most obese and disease-riddled society in the history of humanity, and we spend more on healthcare than any other nation.
I've got a lot to say, can't hold it in this time, got no filter, I got no filter, no filter, I got no filter, no filter, I got no filter, no filter, I got no filter.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm actually going to react to a video by Joe Rogan where he interviews an individual named Brigham Buhler. Now, Buhler is a pharmaceutical sales rep who worked for giants like Eli Lilly and Stryker for about 15 years. He also spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill with lawmakers where he's witnessed firsthand the pill pipeline going from plant all the way to physician to you. Now, I find this conversation really, really interesting because I'm a pharmaceutical insider myself, except for I come at it from the manufacturing area. I've done clinical trial materials, I've done supplements, I've done just about everything you can think of. But I'm on the regulation side and the control side of everything. So I like to hear this perspective. Now, I have heard some of my sales rep buddies in the industry describe some of the things he's talking about. Now, in this video, Brigham talks a lot about the 2023 peptide restrictions that happened under the Biden administration and the real reasons for it. And as somebody who understands how these products are made and controlled, what he's saying about the system being broken and where the incentives are coming from is something that you really need to hear. So why don't we get into this? Okay, one thing I want to make clear right off the bat is that this has nothing to do with my feelings on peptides of any kind, any of these things, okay? Has nothing to do with that. I am typically a person who steers away from any type of pharmaceutical and any type of or most supplements. Let me just say most. And this stuff is neither. It's neither a supplement or a pharmaceutical. So it's in a no man's land of sorts. And I wanted to kind of go over that. So after we listen to this clip, I'm going to explain what these things are, kind of how they're used. So you kind of get a picture of what the hubbub was all about. But this guy who's going to talk about this stuff, this Brigham guy, is actually very knowledgeable and he brings an interesting perspective. And I am also not saying that I support him as a person. I know some things about him and I know he started his own company and all this kind of stuff, but like wellness, and it does some longevity stuff, which I don't really have any kind of positive feelings about. But not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, what he's saying about his industry experience and stuff that he witnessed is very valuable, and that's kind of what I wanted to present to you. But I will go over a couple of things about peptides in general and where the nuances are when it comes to these substances after we watch the clip. So,
Okay, so we should also clarify that when we're talking about peptides and peptides being dangerous, GLP-1s are peptides.
Correct.
And this is a gigantic market right now. I mean, you're seeing all these ladies that look like they're cutting weight to make the UFC flyweight division. You know, you're seeing everybody that it's on these peptides is losing weight. Like, I don't know if Oprah's on them, but she lost a ton of weight. I know there's a bunch of celebrities that you see that get Ozempic face.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
so many influencers too on the academia side go online and go, I would never prescribe peptides because I'm a board certified clinician and I only prescribe things that have science and data that back them. And a lot of
most studies. I had to get that in there. I had to get that in there.
At times I'd say, man, you might just be uneducated on this topic and the nuances of this topic. In reality, most clinicians are prescribing drugs off-label, right? So a huge percentage of medical practices use products off-label. It's
Yeah, like all of them. Like, you wouldn't believe how many medications that physicians are using for things that they're not intended for, which seems a little bit hypocritical to me. Like, if you are going to buy into the whole pharmaceutical model and the clinical trials and the studies, and, if you're using something for a reason that you're not supposed to use it for, it wasn't authorized to be used as, and then doctors are just randomly just using it however they want in a lot of ways. It's nuts that they can do that. I think, at least.
Indicated for one thing or one patient population or a dosage or a chronic disease state, but clinicians have the autonomy and the authority to use that drug in a manner that it's not indicated for. And they do that every day.
Well, this was the big challenge during COVID, right? With hydroxychloroquine and with ivermectin.
Yep.
That was the big challenge. And the real problem is that it interferes with the potential profits of pharmaceutical drugs that are approved. So if you give someone the option to take something that's off-label, that's less expensive, and then they find out it's effective, then you'll get less, and then it gets public, you find out there's less people that are taking whatever pharmaceutically approved drug.
Correct. And so what created this backlash or momentum against peptides, candidly, were the GLP-1 weight loss drugs. So I do want to put them in two different buckets, because there's the 19 peptides that got moved to the dangerous list with no clear answer from the previous administration as to why.
That's the 2023 ban that I was talking about, where they changed the rules, and we will go over this, but that's what he's talking about here.
Or how. But what I have seen from being able to get behind the scenes and meet with lobbyists and legislators at the state and federal level is the lobbying power of Big Pharma is real. It's real and it's intense. And it is not going away.
It's a lot of money.
And so to put myself in the shoes of somebody, like I've gotten to know Chris Klump really well at the FDA, and Chris negotiated the most favored nation pricing on the pharmaceutical drugs with Lilly and Novo and all these big conglomerates. And those companies definitively, publicly and privately, are banging on the table of legislators and politicians and saying, look, we spent billions of dollars to innovate these drugs. We played within the rules of the system. And now these drugs hit the market, and you're allowing compounders and small independent pharmacies to rip off our patents, right? And that's their stance. And they plant that stake way over here. If that regulator only hears that part of the story, it's a compelling story. You look at it and go, God, man, poor Big Pharma, they spent all this money. But if you...
The term or the phrase poor Big Pharma is just funny to me. The way he describes this. I know what he's saying. I get what he's saying, but it's just kind of hilarious,
Zoom out and the lay of the land a little bit more, which is hard if you don't come from this industry. The truth is always in the middle. So... devil's advocate, of course you want to protect the patent rights of a company that spent billions of dollars to bring a drug to market. We've covered this before, though. The dirty secret is a large majority of the drugs that come to market come from the NIH. And phase 1 trials are done at the NIH. The NIH is funded by taxpayer dollars. You and I are paying to innovate and create molecules that then get licensed off to big pharmaceutical companies so they can bring them through the FDA approval process.
How is that legal?
It's nuts.
That is
the way the world works. Good morning, everyone that's waking up to this. That is the way the world works. This is not, if you live in a world where you think that physicians work within this old school type of family doctor paradigm, where everybody's really doing a lot of investigations to get down to root causes. That is not how it works. It's more of a subscription model. It's a maintenance type of thing. And most of the medications are, just in general, are maintenance medications. They mitigate symptoms. They don't really get to the root cause of what's causing a lot of the problems. So, just saying.
Wild.
Yeah, it's nuts. And so I was trying to explain to, the existing team at HHS, zoom out. The system, as much as you are being told failed and let Big Pharma down and allowed people to come in and infringe upon these patents, the truth of the matter is the FDA sent out the bat signal and said, we can't meet the need of the American people. There is a backlog on these drugs. It's on the backlogs list. Can compounders make these drugs? This has been a regulatory pathway that's been in existence for 30, 40 years. It happens all the time. So compounders respond to the bat signal, begin to make these medications to the benefit of the American people during the shortage list. And then you have these big pharmaceutical companies going, look, they're making our drugs, they're violating our patent. If your concern is that these companies didn't get the juice worth the squeeze from the patent, Eli Lilly 7x'd the value of their company. They're worth $800 billion. They literally are worth more than most developed nations.
The point is, you get how ridiculous it is, but if you're hearing this on the Hill and you have all these lobbyists complaining like, oh my God, we spent so much money, but in reality, did you really? But did you? It's one of those situations. Or did the taxpayers spend a lot of the money?
This was the biggest blockbuster molecule in the history of the world. In the history of humanity, there has never been a drug that is this big of a blockbuster. The money was made 50,000 times over.
And you think that statins were big, and they were.
Nobody was harmed. But when I'm a legislator and I've got somebody telling me, these guys hurt us to the tune of $7 billion. And I know that's what they're telling these legislators because I've met with the legislators at the state and federal level. And then I have to go, well, hold on. The entire compounding sector only does $7 billion. GLP-1s were $2.5 billion. I know that's a big number, but that was when you were asking us to make these compounds. That number's not nearly as large today. And you also shut down 503Bs, which is half of the compounding industry's ability to make these compounds. The truth of the matter is, it's about $1.5 to $2 billion total that this industry was able to compound during the backlog in order to meet the needs of the American people. They're going to do $35 to $40 million in just GLP-1 drugs this year in revenue. So you're talking an accounting error for Big Pharma. And the reason I want to lay all that out is I'm not here to argue about the GLP-1s. It sets a dangerous precedent. If pharma lobbies hard enough and they're able to get this done, like what they want to do, reclassifying all these as biologics, it allows them to extend the patent for 10 to 12 years. It's this whole shell game, but it sets precedent.
And they can lock everything up, basically.
Like we covered before, and that precedent is dangerous. It's a slippery slope because if you do totally shut out compounders from their ability to make this for the American people, how long before they move to the next thing? And in one breath, you've got big pharmaceutical companies saying, I'll use Lilly again as an example because they're the main culprit. Lilly is saying peptides are dangerous. They're getting the API from China. We shouldn't allow these compounders to make peptides.
Oh my God. Okay, let me just give you a little bit of insight. In the manufacturing area, do you know how many APIs are coming from China? A lot of them. A lot of them. So, I mean, to say that all of a sudden that's bad, it's scary how much of our excipients and API is active pharmaceutical ingredient. So a lot of these things have been coming from China for a very long time. A lot of them are coming from a lot of places. And so they're insinuating that, oh, you're getting it from China, it must be bad or whatever, which, I mean, they have standards that they make stuff to. I mean, it's not like just because it's from China, it's necessarily bad. And plus, you can vet it and you can analyze it and make sure that it meets all of the USP criteria or whatever, like when you get it. But I mean, it's not like we just take anything and don't do anything about it. So it's just interesting that they're using that excuse.
Meanwhile, Eli Lilly just signed a $7 billion deal to acquire a peptide company out of China. China. So Lilly's buying a peptide company from China
And complaining.
while lobbying government officials and saying it's dangerous to use products from China and these compounders are dangerous and nobody's regulating it. And there's just all this misnomer and dogma, and it's confusing if you don't come from healthcare.
Well, it seems like it would be very confusing for a regulator. Very confusing
Yes.
for someone who's not educated on this to get up to speed.
100%. And they have so many initiatives and so many things they're tackling. And then the challenge historically is when you're Big Pharma, and I think it was like $31 million that industry used in lobbying power last year as an industry. Dollars equal accessibility. Accessibility equals impressionability. And impressionability equals outcomes. It's like trying to win a debate where I get 1 minute and the opposition gets 9 minutes. And in the 1 minute, I've got to debunk all the lies that the opposition told. And I don't even want to use the word lies. You can use facts, but like we've said before, like facts can be skewed when delivered inappropriately. If you say they cost us $7 billion
Context. Again, you have to hear the whole story.
and we spent $3 billion to bring this drug to market, and they're importing products from China, and there's no safety nets, and nobody's inspecting them, and this is what we're worried about. This is dangerous, and this is a liability to the American public. A politician's ears are going to perk up, especially when you're lobbying them and funding campaigns and trying to influence those folks. But the truth is, yeah, if you take into account all the drugs that didn't make it and you want to cook the books, you can make it look like you spent $1 billion to $3 billion. You can also take credit for all the drugs that were launched out of the NIH that you bought the rights to and monetized for decades. And then you can talk about safety, but in reality, there were recalls from both Lilly and Novo Nordisk. There are all sorts of array of issues and label changes, and historically, even the FDA itself. This is one of the things with peptides that when I had the privilege of meeting with Marty McCary about, I said, Marty, if we're being honest, this is y'all's numbers. 60 to 80% of the drugs that make it through the drug approval process will have a major label change or recall. 60.
And what you have to understand is how significant label changes are. It's a big deal. If a label changes, something very, very significant caused it. It doesn't just you don't just like, oh, I want a blue one. It's like something significant causes it.
To 80% of the medications that come through this process end up having a major label change or recall. So
What is a major label change?
So they uncover, like, an example with depressants, they realized the suicidal ideation in teenagers, right? And they had to change that label and say, hey, not only is this only a fraction better than a placebo, right? Barely differentiates from placebo retrospectively.
And not even close to exercise.
I know. It's literally, exercise is 6 to 7-fold more efficacious than an anti.
That's really true. It was interesting that it did help a lot. And in a lot of cases, helped a lot more than a lot of other things. Let's put it that way.
How wild is that?
Yeah. And then you go back to the science. The science was all cooked books. It was all said that it was serotonin related, and there was never a single study that correlated depression to serotonin.
Do you remember the videos? If you've watched me for a while, you know that one of my biggest things is that when they made the admission recently, and I mean in recent years, I might have been 2022, I'm not 100% sure, but when they came out and said, oh, you know, that whole serotonin theory of depression that we were looking at, and the reason that we built these drugs to treat it, that focus on serotonin, it's like, yeah, well, we really we can't say that was proven. You know, not a thing, man. So it's like nothing to see here. But yet they're still prescribing them. So, yeah.
It was all dogma created by industry. And so, again, Marty talks about this in his book. So I know he's aligned with a lot of these viewpoints. When it comes down to peptides, though, it gets a little confusing because you're talking proactive, predictive, preventative care. If somebody's taking a peptide to optimize their healing, it's not a chronic disease-related issue. The system is built to monetize and profiteer off of treating the symptoms of chronic disease. It's become a prescription management system, not a healthcare system. And that's the big challenge. This is an entire paradigm shift that I don't know if all regulators truly understand. I think they're trying to wrap their head around it. I think Secretary Kennedy understands it. I think a lot of this movement in the American people post-COVID have fundamentally changed. Like the view on from that I've seen is people do now question authority. People do now question just because something came through the FDA doesn't mean it's safe. And just because something hasn't gone through the FDA approval process doesn't mean that it's dangerous or doesn't work. A lot of times there's a reason why, like BPC 157, there's a patent out of Croatia, I believe, on that molecule. And that patent is, I think, lasts 3 more years. Why would you go spend $1 billion to $3 billion to try and bring a drug to market that already has a patent? The other issue with it is a short chain amino acid peptide found readily in nature. And patent law makes it very difficult to patent what is naturally found in nature. And that is why the big pharmaceutical companies are struggling with their patents on the GLP-1s. They have patented dosaging and delivery mechanisms. They're not arguing against the patent. If you look at the lawsuits that they filed nationwide, they're arguing against people advertising. They're arguing against some of the things people shouldn't be doing, rightfully so, but they're not arguing against the patent.
Let me ask you this. So just imagine, and I don't think this is a good idea, but imagine if only pharmaceutical drug companies were allowed to make peptides, would they just become legal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, what would happen?
Well, it would be a giant business.
It would be a giant business, and it is going to be a
price
giant.
would raise a little
yeah,
bit.
100%.
But also the availability would skyrocket, and you would start seeing commercials on CNN.
Yes.
BPC 157 helps soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
Helps this, helps that. Then you'd show fit people at the beach jogging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you, but the fear, and this is what I'm viewing it as there's 3 options, and these are the 3 things that I've seen. There's the traditional system, the sick care system. That system is controlled by insurance, big pharmaceutical companies, and regulators. Whether intentional or unintentional, the system was cooked. It's been cooked and baked for a long time, and it is the system that it is. And we know where that system got us. That system got us to 1.7 to 1.9 million Americans dying every year of chronic disease, more than every world war we've ever fought. It's got us to be the most obese and disease-riddled society in the history of humanity, and we spend more on healthcare than any other nation. So that
Now, when he's talking about this, he's coming in from the angle that if you're just treating symptoms, you're never getting to the root cause. I think you have to go deeper, and I always talk about the medical industrial complex. And what I mean by that, a lot of people don't mean the same things that I mean really by it. What I mean by that is you've got big food, big pharma, big ags, and big medical. All of these things working with the status quo. And you have environmental things too. So you're looking at things like, when it comes to the food we're putting in our mouth that we do every day, we put lots of it in our mouth and we do it every single day. Well, all of this processed food and all of these grass, generally recognized as safe ingredients that the food industry can just say, oh yeah, it's good. And we can eat it for years and years and years. They don't know what it's going to do. And we're finding out what it did to us.
one option. And then we go.
Just those facts are so crazy.
It's nuts. And to think that to ask questions or to challenge that system is wrong. And that's where I am. So again, I'm not sitting here.
So, Jerry, let me just say that because, you are looked at if you're questioning how the system operates and, could be kneecapped, or something on this. But, Jerry, we're talking about people's opinions. I'm not giving medical advice. Oh, Jerry is my nickname for Gemini, in case you don't know that, because we, got on a first name basis now that Gemini is actually scanning all of my videos. So just for the record, I am not giving people medical advice. I am not even giving an opinion on peptides. And I would never in a million years, disparage our healthcare system. Would I, Jerry? No.
I'm not trying to make this political because I really am not. I don't care, conservative, Democrat, Republican. Chronic disease doesn't care about your political leanings. It doesn't care. Like, Disease and death comes for all of us. And my goal is, how do we prevent it? How do we delay it? How do we drive health span? You don't do it playing whack-a-mole and treating the symptoms of a chronic disease. You get proactive, predictive, and preventative. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to be able to run diagnostic tests and tools. Well, the insurance companies shut that down and make that really hard to do. And so in the healthcare system that exists today, in the insurance model, prescription management is the main goal of those models. And I've said this time and time again, you've got to view health insurance in America like car insurance. It's there if you wreck the car. We are great at triaging and treating a catastrophic event. Heart attack, stroke, hospitals. You're in there, something catastrophic happens, we can triage that disaster and we can get you in and out of the hospital. We are absolutely an abysmal failure at preventing chronic disease and driving health span. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is to get proactive and predictive and personalized.
Well, that sounded familiar, didn't it? If you've been listening to me, you've probably heard all this crap before. Now that you've actually heard the industry perspective from the sales and lobbying side of all of this, let's take a look at the technical and regulatory breakdown of how this actually happened with these peptides and how the February 2026 reversal will change the landscape of a lot of this stuff. First, what are peptides? For a quick refresher, peptides are short chains of amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. Think of them as biological messengers that signal your body to repair tissue or modulate the immune system. In the regenerative world, compounds like BPC 157 have become foundational for people looking to address issues that traditional treatments often miss. Next, we need to look at the paradigm difference between allopathic medicine versus regenerative medicine. As Brigham mentioned, there's a friction here between the two philosophies. Allopathic medicine is a traditional Western approach. It's reactive and focuses on using standardized drugs to manage symptoms. On the other hand, regenerative and functional medicine looks for a root cause. This movement believes that many chronic illnesses are downstream from a broken food supply and metabolic neglect, which the traditional pharma model often ignores because there's more money in chronic symptom management. In addition, peptides live in a regulatory no man's land. They don't meet the legal definition of a supplement, but they haven't completed the NDA process to be an approved drug. This creates a gray market where these were sold as research chemicals to dodge FDA oversight. From a manufacturing standpoint, it's kind of a nightmare. There's a zero guarantee of purity or sterility. Historically, the only safe way to get these was through compounding. For those who don't know, a compounding pharmacy is different from your neighborhood CVS. Instead of just handing you a mass-produced pill from a big pharma factory, a compounding pharmacist is a specialist who mixes, alters, or creates a customized medication from raw ingredients tailored specifically to a doctor's prescription. This operates under strict manufacturing standards like USP 797 that the gray market completely ignores. So the next thing we got to talk about is how the Biden administration's Category 2 differs from RFK Jr.'s Category 1 and how the reversal took place in February of 2026. In late 2023, the Biden administration's FDA effectively shut down that safe route for compounding pharmacies. They moved 19 peptides to Category 2, which is the do not compound list. This didn't stop the demand. It just forced people away from regulated U.S. pharmacies into the unregulated back alleys of the internet. However, on February 27, 2026, HHS Secretary RFK Jr. announced a major reversal on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's directing the FDA to move approximately 14 of the 19 peptides back to Category 1. In manufacturing terms, this is a massive shift. Category 2 was a stop sign. Category 1 means evaluated for safety and permitted for use. This restores the legal pipeline, allowing licensed U.S. pharmacies to produce these again under strict standards. It takes the power away from research websites and puts it back into a regulated physician-led environment. So this doesn't mean that you can buy them over the counter, though. These still require a valid prescription from a physician, but what it does mean is that the pill pipeline is being restored for those who want an actual clinical and tested product. So as far as these peptides go, a lot of you probably have never even really heard much about them at all. But some of you may be thinking, well, isn't that like a bodybuilding thing? Well, it actually affects a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. So let's go over the different groups that are actually interested in this stuff and see who was affected. First, there is the bodybuilding and fitness community. They use peptides like BPC 157, TB 500, CJC 1295 for rapid tissue repair and growth hormone optimization. The reversal allows them to stop using research chemicals and at least get sterile tested vials from a U.S. pharmacy. Now, the second group to be affected is the longevity and biohacking group. The longevity part, well, I'm not much of a fan of, but they use things like NAD+. This is the anti-aging crowd, and this is the fastest growing group. Think tech execs and like older adults. They use peptides to slow cellular aging and improve their skin and hair. They're the ones who are the most afraid of the gray market risks. So the next group is the general wellness and gut health group. They use items like BPC 157 and KPV. These are the chronic illness people. Millions of people use BPC 157 specifically for Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and leaky gut. For them, the 2023 ban was devastating because it took away a tool that was actually working for their chronic inflammation, according to many reports. Then, of course, you had the medical and clinical providers who were affected by this ban because they weren't able to treat their patients the way that they had been in the past. So I found it very interesting listening to the lobbying and political side of all of this because it plays a big role in what drugs are brought to market, where they come from, and how the lawmakers are treating the regulations that surround it. And it's important that we dig into this stuff and we understand it. We need to stay on top of all of this because it directly affects us in the end. So I hope you found this video interesting. And if you did like the video, if you could hit the like button, it would help me out a lot. It really helps the channel. And make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future content. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.